So anyway, all right, so we're started. Good morning, everybody. Yeah. So there are so many things that I was reflecting on in meditation this morning. And like we were just saying, it's sort of like every moment is so individual. Yeah, I just find interesting. It's just been huge epiphanies, like one after the other. But then it's like, but I'm still not seeing the bigger picture because it's like, whoa, I get bowled over with this one, and whoa, I get bowled over with that one, and whoa, and it just keeps on going,
Right.
Um,
Right.
oh, and I don't know what to do with. I don't yet know what to do with it. Yeah, there's just been so many things, and it's almost like because I keep on setting things to be okay. Well, make sure whatever messages are big honking, neon signs, right?
Right. Right.
I get them, but then I'm like, well, okay, but now I guess I need to get the relevance and how they fit into the bigger picture with that too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I just keep focusing on remembering.
Yeah.
Just I remember how to do this. I remember why I'm here. I remember what to do next. That's what which goes a long way to taking the judgment off. Why can I not do this? What am I doing wrong? What am I not seeing? What am I not hearing? What am I not doing right? And that's a hard habit to let go of.
It is. And it's funny. It's one thing that I tell people all the time, and you and I've talked about this so many times, but it's like one thing that I saw a long time ago, and I thought, what a great tool is when we ask ourselves stuff like, how come I can't do this? Or, blah, 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 to change that question to how can I do this?
Right.
Or how's the best way to do this? Or, like, how can I have this in my life? Because we have all those, like a lot of times those really secret little thoughts of how come I can't be like that person, or how come they get it like that? And it's like, well,
Right.
instead of like that, because what we're doing is that when we say, how come I can't, we perpetuate that lack, right?
Right. The can't.
Because the universe is, okay, I'll show you how come you can't,
Right. Right.
But if we say, how can I, it helps us to remember, how can I have this in my reality? And that's just one thing that I've gotten into the habit of, when I see things like that coming up in me, to change them. But that's just a little tip for anybody who's watching this, because you already know that. We already know.
Well, the thing that's been percolating up since last week was a lot of remembering how to create differently. We've talked about create beyond remembering and all that kind of stuff. Well, I feel like personally, I'm adjusting from that default of if I lose something, it's like, oh my God, where is it? Instead of saying, this is where it is, now I'm just going to go find it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that staying in that victimhood. So I've been trying to move that outward into bigger things. And one of the things that I'm finding is how deeply embedded and ingrained creating in this 3D through the suffering and the pain. And for some reason, going back to my physical body and the actual process of childbirth, it feels like I haven't healed all that yet. And it's like we're getting ready to birth something new again, which, makes my body go, oh my God, I don't have the bandwidth for that right now.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, I feel like I physically am going through the motions of having to 3D birth something, and that's not what this is about.
No, actually, it's funny because I did get some clarity on something that's related, of course, in meditation this morning, and something I've been sort of pondering about myself this whole week and it's related. So, of course,
right,
it's going to sound not related in the beginning, but I can see.
But we'll pull it around.
I can see it already. So something that keeps on hitting. So all right, like you and I know, like this whole Odessa thing just keeps on like bang, and it keeps on hitting us upside the head. Like, what is it? What is it? What is it? Right. So for anybody who's watching, I don't know if I've even brought this up in any of our videos, but that
I got to check what the dog's chewing on.
okay. Well, I'll explain while you check.
Yeah.
It's so Odessa was a project in World War II by the Nazis, and at the public level, it was the project of like disseminating the Nazis after World War II so that they were in hiding, right? So that's what you'll find a lot of times in the public stuff. But the more you dig, the more you find. Odessa was also part of a project of basically the mind control stuff that the Nazis did on just prisoners to see if they could get them to be sort of like, the idea of the awakened assassin thing that we have in the movies, like by like a code word or keyword, or basically breaking somebody down so that they just become a complete, basically
Programmable.
Yeah. Whoa, that was weird. So anyway, for some reason, for the past, like, I don't know, couple of years, like that name came to me. I never knew anything about it. And literally I heard one day very clearly meditation, remember Odessa. And I was like, I don't even know what Odessa is. And then all of a sudden I started seeing it everywhere. And there's Odessa, Texas. All of a sudden I was watching a TV show where there's like somebody's driving past the sign Odessa, Texas. And I'm watching some movie where it's like, by Odessa Productions or whatever. And I'm like, okay, seriously. Yeah, that's how the messages come to me. But you and I both have had sporadic stuff that comes up. And I keep on asking, well, what's the importance? Because I'm not married to any stories anymore. I've like resolved and completed history. It's like, yeah, okay, it's all about now. So then why does this keep on pinging me and pinging me and pinging me? So and recently, like, so it'd go away and then it'd come back. And I think recently we've started to get that again, right? So something that hit me, and I don't think I talked about this last week. I meant to, and I didn't, because we had other things that were more important, obviously, in the moment. So something that's been circling in another jigsaw puzzle, which feels like it's part of course, the bigger jigsaw puzzle. So here's like another aside. I have had such a little ping about noticing the words, how prominent it has become that people are having chronic migraine problems. They're having tinnitus. They're having depression. Mm-hmm. Like all of these brain things, right? That are basically like symptoms of like the brain in lockdown mode for some reason, right? So what hit me a couple weeks ago, and it was actually a conversation with my mother, weirdly enough, because my mother has gone, from like 10 years ago, like being completely clueless about the stuff to almost being even more activist and more, like about all the, about all the stuff. But she was talking to me about her tinnitus. She's gotten it, but it seems like it's just been like every other person you talk to, right? And it just keeps on hitting me again and again. I hear somebody tell me about migraine problems, and problems telling me about tinnitus, problems telling me about depression. It's like over and over and over. And she was saying she's got to minimize the EMFs in her house because she believes that that's really triggering this tinnitus. And I was like, huh. And it was funny because usually I just like, okay, Mom, whatever, like, because now she's almost like on that extreme conspiratorial thing or whatever. But then I was like, no, there's something about the EMFs, because the EMF thing keeps on hitting me lately. Weird little things, like when we got our internet changed, and I realized that for some reason the router is on the other side of my office, and so the router is in my office on one side of this room that I'm in, and then the TV in the living room is on the other side. And it's really funny that throughout the entire house, the Wi-Fi is great, except from the router to the living room. It's like, cause it's got to go through my meditation room because
Oh, yeah.
you know, and Scott and I joke about that, well, it's the energy, it's your whatever, it's your 5,000 organite pyramids that you have, because that's what their natural, like their basic focus is to dispel EMFs, right? To dispel harmful EMFs, to transmute them. So I was like, okay, so there's reason for me to be noticing that. And I could feel it. Like that was one of those things of like, oh, wait. So then I was like, well, what if like this from a very 3D level, and I had a long discussion with my husband about this in a 3-hour car ride to see our daughter the other weekend, was, what if, because we've shifted the pure amount of EMFs, right, of frequency, of electromagnetic frequency that are around us. But I look at the interconnectivity of everything in that respect from that frequency that we're using, right? And because we have exponentially increased it over the past, 2 decades, right? That our bodies are reacting to that. So it's very 3D, right?
Right.
Are reacting because it's our environment is evolving in a way that our bodies haven't yet evolved, or something like that, right? So I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Again, I don't want to get into conspiracy, but here's the thing. So what occurred to me is, well, that could very easily be manipulated to our bodies, to affect our bodies a certain way, right?
Right.
To cause illness, to cause pain, to cause limitation, right? So then I was like, well, maybe that's what the Odessa is, that we keep on getting hit with, right? Is that, it's funny because my husband even said something. He goes, yeah, well, he goes, nobody's really, I said, well, why is nobody looking at this? Because they do know that it affects our body, right?
Right.
And so I said, why do you think nobody's looking at this? Like, I mean, I think there are some looking at this, but everybody sort of like rolls their eyes, right?
Well, and nobody wants to live with the ramifications of what it means.
Right.
Because nobody wants to give up what we get.
Right.
But
so,
I know, whenever, because I used to have migraines pretty regularly, and now when I even begin to get a headache, I have to do something through vibration at the base of my skull and the back of my head to make myself let go, because it's like a holding.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, when you're on a roller coaster and you have no choice but to just let go. That's what I equate it to, and it's gone instantly. So it's like a resistance that builds up, whether it's through stress or tension or EMFs or whatever. That seems to be, for me, the trigger for the migraine is it's that resistance to whatever is going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, right. And that shows you right there, the vibration or frequency that once you shift it, it dispels that whatever, right?
And it's instant. And I can feel when I let go.
Right. So, yeah. And it's funny because of course it's that whole, like, it keeps on getting thrown at me, like hit me, because it's all, everybody around me is like people I'm talking to about depression, about the migraines. I mean, there's somebody, I was talking to that their child had a migraine for, like, it's going to a neurologist right now because they have a migraine that won't go away. Right. And this is really over, like, it's been like 3 or 4 weeks now. Right. And, you went through that for a while.
I don't know.
But, and this particular child or teenager is very, very, very energetically sensitive. And it was funny as we were talking, and again, it hit me again. And I was like, talk about this. Talk about the EMFs. Ask about where the router is in the house. Ask about how much is, in the bedroom with the child, and so all of this kind of
where
stuff.
they sleep with their phone.
Yeah,
because a lot of kids put them under their pillow. I mean, I keep mine next to the bed, but that's never seemed to be an issue for me.
Oh yeah, see, I don't even have mine in my room with me typically. So, but that's just a habit. So, but so fast forward, the point to all of this is this. So then I'm like, okay, so I went into meditation this morning and I said, so what, basically I was getting that, of course, energetically we can shift that.
Right. Right.
But there's something to see from it first, right? Or else it would be hitting me the way that it is. So I was asking anything I need to see. So what came back to me was, okay, well, it is all connected, right? And like what we recall as the Lemurian agenda of the reptilian thing, right? With the implants, is we perceive it to be very similar as to what's going on with the EMFs, right? And yeah, they are using it to some degree in ways that we're not even like conscious of,
right,
being used. And collectively, that makes us fear, right? Because we think, okay, that's control and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Except, of course, collectively, we've agreed to whatever's going on, right? So what if, and this somehow tied back, I can't even remember what you started with, but I'm like, this tie in, because it was like, what if it was something to do with taking from it it's almost like just taking that, because it's a combination of all these other things too that are all together, right? But this particular thing, because our bodies are energy and and we have these huge electromagnetic fields, and anything that passes through that's electromagnetic affects us.
Right. Whether it's a solar flare.
Exactly. That's what we've chosen in the physical. So the key was what came to me and what I was shown or saw or understood or whatever in meditation, is to allow ourselves to take the optimal expansion allowance from it and then tune into a completely different frequency where this doesn't even exist for us anymore.
And you know what I see when you say that is, how when you're surfing, how you have to stay right at the right place on the wave. You can't get behind it. You can't get too far in front of it, or you'll not ride the wave.
Right. It's almost like putting your hand in the wave, but then keeping your balance and this other stuff.
So it's almost like, what if these EMFs, the whole purpose of them was to continually push us farther and farther out of where we are.
Right.
To make us do this differently.
Right. It's like it's like the water pushing the oil to the surface, right? It's
constantly having to rise above it.
Right. Right. And if we resist it, which a lot of us are in the physical level doing, right? Because the cells say, wait a second, no, I wasn't programmed for this. This is what my programming is.
Right.
Is this old blueprint? It's like, no, but we're changing the blueprint. Okay, well, this is adjusting. Again, the cells, everything is adjusting and evolving on the fly versus how we've done it before, right?
Right.
So it's almost like, okay, so expand to allow. So basically, I've come into this place wherever I start feeling resistance in my physical body, I'm like, okay, allow, just allow.
Right.
Expand, allow, flow with it, whatever's the best. But what was the point that you were making originally? Because I wanted to come back around to that.
Creation, the old way of creation, and the birthing a new world.
Oh, right, birthing.
Birth it like we birthed everything else in this 3D.
Right, and we perceive birthing a certain way in the 3D. That's where it was. And it's time now to take from that, what is useful, right, and leave the rest behind and just tune into a different frequency altogether.
Well, and to in the process of taking what you need, let go of the rest to allow that to not permeate anymore.
Right.
Which is what I find it's letting go of that habit.
Right. Well, and not believing it has to be painful. It has to be hard and
suffering.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Physically taxing. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yep.
over the weekend, so we are re
Oh, your deck?
yeah, we're rebuilding the deck. We're working on that. So over the weekend, we tore down all the rails. So we have basically a stage outside right now. We tore down all the rails because, you know, and it's basically, you know, as I've talked about with the house going soon, but we wanted to, there's some face value stuff that's important. And I got tired of, and we might be here in a year or two, and I'm tired of looking at this rotted old deck that's 30 years old, you know, just sitting out there. So we tore off all the rails, you know, and then I got this stuff, which is like freaking amazing. It's like mold and mildew and whatever wood cleaner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, the stuff is like is magical. But the wood on the deck, so we replaced some of the planks of wood because, you know, they were really rotting away. And then I was taking the stuff, Scott was replacing some siding along the edges that had rotted because of the wood. Because they had, when they created the deck, they actually bumped it right up on the house, which, yeah, there are some not so smart things that had been done. But anyway, so I took the task of scrubbing down the top of the deck with this stuff, you know, and the bristles. And I'll tell you what, 22 years plus, because I'm sure it was never done before. Well, they had painted it without
Cleaning.
yeah, it was just like bleh. So before we had moved in. So I was scrubbing everything off, getting the rest of the paint off, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So 22 years of stuff scrubbing up, being scrubbed up and taken, you know, like washed away.
Washed away. Right.
Which is fabulous because literally when we got done, we're like, okay, now we still have a stage right now. But oh my God, look, it's brown like wood. It's like wood again. It's like, yay. But last night my body was in pain, right? So like I started, like, it was funny, Scott and I got like we had dinner at my mother's, we came back and we're sitting there, we're like, oh my God. And like, why am I in so much pain? I mean, I scrub stuff all the time, but you know, that's the cellular structure of, okay, you just flowed through 22 years of stuff.
Right.
That you've allowed to physically hang on here until now. So now you're just letting all that go once.
Right.
So I literally sat there and I was like, okay. And Scott too, he was hurting as well, which is weird because it wasn't like, yeah, I mean, it was odd. So I said, okay, I'm just going to allow and flow, let it go, like let it wash through, flow through, complete with gratitude, blah, blah, blah. And by the time I went to bed, I was still sore, but a lot better. And then I woke up this morning, I was like, oh, it's all gone.
All gone.
And that's what many of us don't realize, that whole inflection of as we change things, right? You and I have been doing a lot of stuff in our houses that reflect that inner cleaning or shifting, so to speak. But again, it's like, do we have to, do I have to clean that out? No, but if I choose to, I can choose to do it differently, right? I can throw it away, right? I could throw it away and just not have one altogether, not have a deck altogether. I could create a new one altogether. I could just renew what I have. And to do that, it does, it is like stripping away this other stuff. So I think this is all tied together though, because of this. Yeah, this frequency thing is really important for us to look at, this EMF stuff. And it's because it's like we're letting it pull us under. We're letting the current of it pull us under instead of riding the top of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which we can do. And a lot of sickness and injury and stuff is all about that stuff now that's coming up, and the physical body's going, oh, well, what do we do with this? In this frequency, it doesn't serve this anymore. It feels like a 5,000 pound weight. Well, then we create sickness and illness and chronic stuff and injury and whatever until we can say, yeah, I don't need it anymore. I can have that complete and flow through it.
Right.
And do it differently.
Right. Well, and what I found was that when I would look, and I was looking more at my physical body and some of the things that I never healed postpartum. and, getting pulled into the whole, what it looks like and what, you have to go through all this. And I was like, to me, it was reminiscent of coming into separation. That whole process of how, we had to do it in stages and I had to do this. And it's like, I feel like climbing back out of that, but realizing that it doesn't have to be done as laboriously as it was coming in.
Right.
And so it was, I say birthing, but that's just the physical, that's just what physically came up for me as the message. And so it's not that that's just about that.
Right. Right. And the tweak of whatever, the little pinhole of perception that came in looking at that this morning. Oh, there's a yawn. Had to do with recalling and remembering that we're divine consciousness and allowing ourselves to access that within ourselves again, right? Which is all part of the Trinity practice. Allows us to remember that we do have access to the full spectrum of frequency, all of it. And it was, what was that? All the time. All the time, right?
Not just when there's solar flares and not just when there's EMFs.
Exactly. And so what I was getting to, what I was seeing or understanding was so in having that remembrance is in our power to say, I choose to access these frequencies, right? And though I'm not excluding these other frequencies, I'm allowing them to be part of, say, the bigger picture in a way that doesn't pull me out of the whole, right?
Right.
Into the pieces that they are. Something like that. That's not quite the right words, but
it's just like reversing the order of separation and wholeness, and instead of separation and wholeness being outside of us, it's like separation is within the wholeness.
Right. It's seeing it, acknowledging it, embracing it. Yes, because in itself, okay, so for what comes to mind, some really simple 3D things like this. If all you eat are cookies, well, you can change that vibrationally, but, from a very 3D perspective, your body's probably not going to optimally function, blah, blah, blah. But if you eat that as part of like a well-rounded, full, robust diet, then it's really not that
detrimental.
In fact, it probably helps certain things or whatever for whatever reason. So I was really, that's sort of but because eventually you change that too. Because the thing is, when you see it from a different perspective, from that wholeness, it's like, well, I can change what it does. That the frequency still exists. And yet you can just change what it does and how it serves the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
And because when we look at the frequency, though, and say, I am going to only access this frequency by exclusion, or these set of frequencies by exclusion, then that's when we limit ourselves in some way, shape, or form, no matter what we think we're excluding, whether we think it's really dark or really,
right,
limiting or whatever. There's a purpose in that whole, right? Or else it wouldn't have been created. So it's a different way of flowing with it to say, right, I see this and the potential exists for manipulation, right? Say with the EMFs or whatever.
Right. And there's also a lot of judgment that comes into it too. Because if you start to, like, for instance, if you had judged yourself for allowing yourself to feel the physical stress of the work that you did. Why can I not do that? And why is this even bothering me?
Right.
Then you further pull yourself into it.
Right. Because then you get into that lack, and
right.
Then you say, okay, well then I'm just going to submerge myself into this like one frequency and not allow the other stuff. where it was like, okay, well, this is uncomfortable and I can change it. I can allow it to change. I can flow through it. I recognize and know what it is. So,
And I remember how to make it different.
yeah, I could do this differently. And so, okay. And sometimes we need that pause for whatever reason, right? And quite honestly, I'm thinking, well, if it was 22 years of crap that I pulled up, plus crap from other people beyond that, it was like, okay, well, a couple hours, that was all right. You know, and sometimes it's not anything. Sometimes it's a couple minutes, and sometimes it's just a blip, and then it's gone.
Right.
But it's when we remember, yeah, it's remembering that. You know, it's so funny because we talk so much about birthing, right? And how do women like totally womanhood bases its strength on its ability to birth.
Right.
I mean, God, yeah, like we're here, a bunch of women sitting around talking about their birthing experience. It's like, you know, a war crime, a war scene kind of thing of, you know,
Right.
oh, well, I had this and oh, I had this. And it's really like more sensationalized, the more, you know, hard, arduous that it was. And now it's time for us to change that. Well,
Yeah.
because it was a way here for us to show our power physically in a situation where men are, you know, where that masculine energy is always trying to minimize it, right?
Yeah. Dampen it. Yeah.
Subordinate it, you know.
Right.
Um, and it's one thing that we've been able to hold on to because it's something very specific to the female anatomy, right?
Right.
So, yeah, lots to think about there. I mean, and
Well, and it feels like it's, you know, of course it's at the collective level, and everything always is, but this feels, it, for me personally, it feels almost like in resolving this for myself, it resolves separation for myself and the choice of separating and the choice of doing this and believing this and perpetuating this. And it feels very core, you know, which, you know, the core exercises and healing the core of your body. That's what it just, it's so, it felt like finally time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what many don't realize is what's important for us to do differently has to do with things that are so deeply embedded in our habits that we don't realize we still do, right?
Right.
Like one of the top things, and that keeps on coming up over and over again for me too, is acceptance, and acceptance by other people for what you see or understand or whatever, and our dependence on it, and how, like, you know, if somebody calls you crazy or, you know, like, you know, talks down to something that you see or understand or believe or
Right.
whatever, then so many times we soften it, we step back, we doubt ourselves, we whatever, we, you know, minimize it so that we're not 100% authentic.
Right. Right.
Um,
Or you acquiesce to something different, but don't do that wholeheartedly because in your heart you know that. Yeah.
yeah. And that's so subtle. Like, it happens all the time. Right. And that's
Yeah,
been a
I
message.
mean, you just, it's almost like it's like gravity. You just it's so automatic you don't even know it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
But
I mean, I have my jewelry, when I wear a pair of earrings, rather than put them away, I accumulated them in a little bowl on the counter in my bathroom. And finally I got so frustrated, I divided them all out, paired them up and everything. Well, I haven't done anything with them. So I noticed that one was missing. So I go looking for it. So I'm on the floor and I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if I could just open my drawer and it's right there? But no, I look everywhere else first and then open my drawer and it's right there. And
Right.
it's like, why do I waste my time?
Right.
Why do I go through the motions of pretending like I don't know where it is and that it's a hunt because I can't control where it is.
At that
I'm
moment.
a victim to the lost earring.
Yeah. Distractions, right?
Right,
These are
right.
such minor distractions that allow us to step back and not be like so fully in the moment.
Right.
Yeah, that's been
Well, and to then get the surge of reassurance that, you know, we really do create all this.
yeah.
We have trained ourselves to be blind to that, to keep us where we are.
Yeah. Have you watched the new X-Files at all? Okay,
No.
so did you ever watch the old ones?
Yeah.
So you know how they would always have like the one tying together like the whole stream of whatever the story was, but then they'd every once in a while have like these random episodes that were just fun.
Right.
Like some like random X-File thing or whatever. So they still are doing this in the new series. And so Scott and I, like, we watched it when they did it last year, and then we watched like a couple episodes in the beginning of the season, and then we sort of dropped off. But we've like caught up on everything else, and we just, since we didn't feel like moving very much last night, it was like, oh, what can we watch? And so Scott's like, well, how about the X-Files? And I was like, yeah, we haven't watched that for a while. I think we stopped at the third one. Anyway, so we watched a couple episodes last night. And so there was this one, actually, and we watched the two episodes we watched. It was funny because it had this funny theme, and it pointed, of course, pointed back to this, right? So the one episode, which was a standalone in the bigger picture of things, right, was this guy who keeps on stopping both Scully and Mulder, and he's like claiming, he's like, this guy is erasing my existence. Like, he keeps on erasing our memories, and then we have to start again, and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, who are you? And, you know, he claims he used to be their partner. The three of them used to work together. And he flashes back to a lot of the old X-Files stuff, and then you see him in it, you know, like that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And it was actually really a fun episode because they were talking about the Mandela effect. Right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. So anybody who doesn't know what the Mandela effect, it's about like how when a collective, like it's a collective shift in reality where people like believe, like it's almost like there's one reality that plays out in this timeline, but they remember another one, and there's a whole bunch of things like that are slightly different than what we remember. Right. So like the Mandela, the reason it was Mandela, because a lot of people somehow remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison back in the 80s, and yet he's alive. I don't know. Actually, I think he just really died, didn't he?
I think so.
But that he's been alive until very recently. And so, and there are people who swear on it. Like, I remember this in the news, and I remember blah, blah, blah. And so then there's all these other things, like even just like little names in children's books and, you know,
Right.
cereals and whatever. So in the show, the guy's like, well, it's not the Mandela effect. It's actually this other thing, because this other guy actually started because, you know, like this and blah, blah, blah. And so then it was this whole, like, trying to then recover, you know, like, and then the guy, every time, like, they go through another scene, it's always in the parking garage, right? Because they're always, like, the guy's, like, you know, shows up again. And he's like, you know, like, you have to remember this and da-da-da. And he's like, well, obviously they erased your memory of this. And it was just so funny. And they go through this whole thing. But the funny thing was Mulder kept on going, or it could just be another timeline. And the funniest part was they would laugh at him for saying, or it could just be another remembrance of another timeline. Like, So they're sitting there talking about this other thing that could be going on, that aliens are changing his memory and da 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 da, right? Changing everybody's memories. Or Mulder's like, oh, it could just be another timeline. And then they're laughing at him. But the funny thing is that he just doesn't care. Like, he's just like,
Right.
well. And then the next episode, he was saying something about, all I keep on coming back to is these other timelines, right? And it's really funny that he's just talking about that openly, and it's sort of like, okay, and and Scully's like, okay, whatever, Mulder, and then changes the subject to move on. But with us having this higher consciousness, or this larger consciousness right now, right? So I thought that was funny, because that is very indicative of like what we see and understand from a higher perspective, right? Is
Right.
I see that all the time. So I'm like, oh, I totally get them. Yeah, we remember other timelines all the time. We have timelines collapsing into each other and muddying up the memory and all that kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody, there's so many. Here's another thing. So many are walking around going, oh, I must be getting old or senile because I keep on forgetting things. I keep on blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with our vast shifting in on what it is that's important to remember, that changes as things are just collapsing into each other.
Well, and it's almost like what's important is totally different, and our focus in the moment is totally different.
Right.
And when you have the need to recall something from the old paradigm, it's like, oh, was I supposed to pay attention to that? And that's where I find a lot of people with the headaches.
Yeah.
They refuse to allow that shift, to let go of all those things that just really aren't that relevant anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we try to retain or control,
Right.
In a linear fashion, right? That makes sense to the mind in the old boxy way, something that doesn't fit. And I think that causes headaches in itself sometimes.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just, there's a lot of, and those who, I hear a lot of it from kids, about kids and teenagers too, about the headaches and stuff like that, and the depression.
Yeah.
Because I think the depression has to do with the chemical shifting as well, like the actual physicality shifting. And it's like knowing, well, it goes back to knowing there's a white elephant's in the room, right? But not knowing what to do about it.
And what role does it play? And does anybody else see it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't even see it, but I know it's there, like that kind of stuff,
Right.
And I think that's a really big, thing that's heavy with kids, teens, and young adults, because they feel it, they know it, but they don't know what to do about it. And they're being pulled in the habit of following what everybody else is doing, right? Because that's what everybody else does, is what everybody else is doing.
Right.
That doesn't jive with their own frequency. And maybe we're all like really specifically on our own frequency. And the only way to really be in a place of well-being and flow is to allow ourselves to be just our frequency, and like to be able to connect with everybody else's, because that's all part of the bigger picture, right? But going through what we call traditional puberty and young adulthood is, well, how do I fit in with everybody else?
Right.
Well, that doesn't even jive anymore at all.
Right.
And yet we've created with the EMF. So here's the funny thing. Maybe the EMF, like say with the Wi-Fi and all the stuff that we do with all the electronics and stuff, so they have a higher purpose, but we've gotten sucked into lower purpose because we've created these things that prevent us from riding the top of the wave, right? That suck us into it.
Right.
Yeah. You're going to say? You forgot. Sorry.
That's all right.
It's just that the thing comes so big, and it's like, oh, the word is so hard to even get out now, like to explain what I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just, and I I don't retain stuff. Like I have to write it down. I even wrote that in my journal this morning, was like, if I don't write in this every day, I forget what happened yesterday.
Well, and then even if you do remember, the time frame it occurred in is just like 5 minutes ago, 5 days ago, 5 months ago. It's all the same.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. But yeah, so I think one of our challenges, because, we do so much, and again, it comes back to, how to like, we have it so embedded because we want harmony, right? And we believe that to have harmony, we have to sacrifice who we are to some degree.
Right.
Because if we're 100% our own frequency, well, then nobody's going to want to be with me. Nobody's going to like me. Nobody's going to, like these are these things that we're taught.
I'll be alone.
Yeah. I'll be alone. I'll be shunned. I'll be laughed at, made, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I truly have like grown to love that character Mulder and on the X-Files, because he didn't care. He's like, this is how I see it, or this is what I'm seeing. And yeah, his perspective has changed over the years and stuff, but he's like, but if you want to laugh at me, go ahead and laugh at me, Mm-hmm. But there was something in this. Yeah. So there was this discussion in that one episode with the Mandela effect thing that was really funny. This one guy, and I can't remember what they called him. Dr. I can't remember. It was just so funny. But Mulder managed to meet with him, and he said, yeah, well, I have been actually, since the whatever I've learned, I accidentally learned how to do this, manipulate people's memories, which means I can manipulate the past, which means I can manipulate the present, and blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't like in a cruel, like, villainous way. It was just sort of like, I'm just doing it.
Right.
And just for fun, because people are falling for it, So, and he said, he said, I wanted to finally meet you because out of respect, because you dig into it, you dig into what you're pursuing, regardless of what other people are saying. But he was talking about how, oh God, I just lost that train of thought because it was so cool the way it was worded. How our reality is shaped by how we allow ourselves to be convinced, right? And it's like,
right.
And he was talking about all these little things that you can just sort of put in there. And he said, and nobody really cares for what the base truth of this reality is anymore.
Right.
He's like, except as what presents in the moment.
Well, I mean, if you look at television, that's the way it is. There's nothing about commercials on television that build you up. It's all about pointing out lack and need.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all the thousands of pharmaceutical commercials, and yeah. And oh my God, you don't want to be without this, or you don't want to let your neighbors have this and you don't have this, or, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Or you look and see how that person has this amazing car, and, was it the Matthew McConaughey does those commercials for, is it Cadillac?
No, Mercury.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, well, look at, he's got somebody like that has a car like that. So, and I know because I worked in marketing for 20 years, really.
Yeah.
And even though I never did consumer marketing, I went to college and had a whole, like on all the marketing stuff. And so I know the consumer behavior, the psychology behind what they say is geared toward that.
Yep.
Purposely. Because the way we have become so embedded in this is this whole like existence of lack. What do I have? What will make me, what will make me whole? There was somebody I was talking to on a consult last week who is an attorney who really, and does yoga, does meditation, does all this kind of stuff, but yet this person told me they feel what they need, what they know they would like to work on is feeling whole on their own, because for some reason they don't feel whole when they're not in a relationship, which is like, okay, how much percentage of the population, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and the message is, well, you just need this, and then you'll be happy. You'll have relationships. You'll have friends. You'll have a great family. It promises you joy. You know, that whole fulfillment package.
Right. Except when it doesn't.
Right. Well, you just need another pill to go with that pill.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So because we're constantly looking for what will make us happy, right? We have that embedded into our language. What will make you happy? What's going to make you happy? And it's like, well, no. How about we ask, how will you allow yourself to be happy?
Right.
See, and that feels so much more empowering to say, how will I allow myself to be happy? Because then it's like knowing that you already have that answer. It's just allowing it to come through.
Right.
Versus looking for it outside of yourself. And that, if we're oh yeah, so I see that tie. If we're constantly looking, if we're still looking outside of ourselves to find that, to find something, think of all these words in our languages that just imply it's outside of us. To find it, to learn about it. It's like there's nothing to learn, there's nothing to find. It's only to remember and access within ourselves, right? So, but it's like, well, how do I find this? And it's partially this. If we are still externally dependent for anything and believe that something is completely outside of us to get, that we have to get somehow to fill us in whatever way, medicine, love, acceptance, whatever for happiness. If we are recalibrating ourselves to fully exist in a different frequency, but we're constantly looking to pull from the old frequencies to fulfill us, then we're never going to allow ourselves to shift.
We'll always fall short.
We'll always fall short. We'll always get pulled under the current.
Right.
If we look at things from a really 3D point of view, of course, I end up going back to food on that, is, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to live a healthy, nurturing lifestyle, but all I eat is cookies and potato chips and, crap. Well,
unless I do something to alter that vibration,
yeah,
it won't meet that expectation. Yeah.
I personally would be ready to support that. But
I practice that a little on the side.
Don't we all? So, yeah. So that makes so much sense, because if we're shifting ourselves to fully exist in this different frequency, then how can we still pull from other frequencies or things that we allow to exist in other frequencies and still maintain ourselves in that? And that's coming from that space of lack. But if we come from that space of wholeness and completeness, and we know it's already inside of us, well, we're not going to reach for it. We're going to know it's already there, right?
We're going to remember it's already there. Yeah.
Yeah. And
at the vibration it needs to be perfectly.
Yeah. Oh, that feels so good. Oh my God. Woo!
What a relief.
Yeah, we got there. That feels really good.
That does. And it takes all the work out of it.
Right. And by the way, we can allow that to be easy and fun and flowing, and it's still fulfilling and productive and whatever. Oh yeah, that makes it so much more fun. Where's the eye? Oh yeah. All right. Well, to align everything for that. Let's just say that today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, you ready?
I am.
All right, let's go do. That startled me. Oh, that was really different.
That was very different.
It was almost like little bubbles. Like all I could explain, like little bubbles popping. It was like all these, and there were all these minor things, and it felt almost tickly, like energetically tickly to me. It was like it was refining some major stuff. And there were other things that came to me out there that now I can't even remember what they were. Because like, oh my God, that was so huge. Now I can't remember what they were.
I kept seeing, like, you know how we've talked about in the past, different versions of you all coming back together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like I kept seeing just almost like, you know, in movies how you have the different screenshots or you know, when in a video or whatever. And it was like all these different versions of me, whether it was in the process of doing something and I just kept going, I don't need to know about all that. I remember how to remember, and I don't need to know all those little pieces. I just remember. And that felt so freeing and so, oh God, I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it that way anymore.
Yeah. Well, that was like like I said, it's hard to explain. It's almost like these little bubbles popping, but I didn't have to look at each one of them as they popped. It was like,
yeah,
oh, no, that just feels like cool. It feels tickly. Yeah. I don't have to look at the. Yeah, that felt lovely. Ah, that was really nice. Yeah, that felt like what I'm understanding is a very important refinement.
yeah, yeah. It was like just a small adjustment, but with huge
like
impact.
universal, yeah.
Exactly.
Universal tweak. Multiversal tweak. Little thing that was huge. Yeah, that was really cool. All right. Well, that was it for this week. So thank you, everybody. We hope to see you next time.
Yep.
Hold on. Now I'm going to have to do this thing again with my keyboard and the mouse, which is still not. Oh, there it is. Okay. Now I can stop. All right. We'll see y'all next time.